In a recent Ynet News opinion piece entitled "If We Don't Divide Jerusalem, We'll Lose It," alarming information has been uncovered that Jerusalem, within the next decade or less, may have more Palestinian residents than Jewish residents. And this is what the article says. There are three national targets which all Israeli governments have been trying to achieve in Jerusalem since 1967. Demographic, territorial, and political. The national effort has failed and the targets have not been achieved. Not only has Israel failed to achieve its goal of reaching a Jewish majority of 80% and even 90%, as it mentioned in its demographic targets in the past in order for it to become a uninational city, but the opposite has happened. Jerusalem is today a binational city, as nearly 40% of its residents are Palestinian. The second target was territorial. The declared goal was and still is to take over by building Jewish neighborhoods of the area of some 70 square kilometers, about 17,000 acres, which makes up the eastern part of the city, thereby disconnecting it from the Arab metropolises. This goal was not achieved either. Jewish neighborhoods are spread out today only on 1/3 of East Jerusalem. 2/3 of the area have a Palestinian population, which is the majority on the ground. From an urban perspective and political perspective, these neighborhoods connect to Bethlehem in the south and Ramallah in the north. The third target was political, gaining international legitimization on the one hand and the Palestinian residents' legitimization on the other hand for Israel's rule in East Jerusalem. After more than 40 years of diplomatic efforts, here too the outcome is disappointing. Not a single country among UN members has recognized our sovereignty in the eastern part of the city. The strongest objection to the Israeli acts of sovereignty in East Jerusalem is being led, of all countries, by our friend, the United States, which has declared that it views construction in the eastern part of the city as an act of illegal settlement. And the article goes on to say that the Israeli government even tried to turn the Palestinians that lived in Israel into Israeli Arabs, and they gave them Israeli identity cards, which granted them a lot of perks that only Israelis, Jewish Israelis, were privileged to have, but instead they have found that the Palestinians remained loyal to their Palestinian Authority institutions. And of the 300,000 residents, only 10,000 of those residents have accepted an Israeli nationality. And going on with the article, it says, as the result of the failure to meet the targets is deepening gaps between the two parts of the city and political polarization. While in the past a very small minority was ready to divide Jerusalem in exchange for peace, today their number among the Israeli public is rising. While in 2000 there was not a single government willing to do so, since then we have had two prime ministers, Barak and Omar, who expressed unequivocal support for the idea. Even in the current government, concerns are rising over what will happen to Israel's capital if we fail to divide it in a peace agreement. So what is happening to Jerusalem economically? Well, let's take a look at this. Let's start with the economic area. Since 1967, Israel has invested some $20 billion in East Jerusalem in the construction of neighborhoods instead of investing in West Jerusalem in growth-generating infrastructures, mainly in industry and tourism. In the past 2 decades, some 200,000 Jews from the upper socioeconomic class have abandoned the city. Jerusalem has become the poorest city in Israel. The opportunity growth rate of the city's Palestinian and ultra-Orthodox populations will lead to its collapse economically. Now, here's the most shocking of the three. The political scenario is the most difficult. The annual Palestinian growth rate is 3.5% today, compared to a growth rate of only 1.5% among the Jewish residents. Now get this, within 10 years, Jerusalem will have a Palestinian majority. In fact, in as early as the next election, they will have the possibility of becoming the ruling party in Jerusalem and crowning a mayor of their own. An organized vote will give them a majority in the city council, and a Palestinian mayor will anyway be elected. And this is his conclusion, says, the scenarios I have described are shared by most researchers and experts on Jerusalem affairs. Our conclusion, which has become even stronger, was, without dividing Jerusalem, we are about to lose it. Now let me reiterate, this Jerusalem mayor is not an East Jerusalem mayor. It is a mayor that will rule all of Jerusalem. And this could happen as early as the next election, which is only a few short years away. But the research indicates that within 10 years, Jerusalem will have a Palestinian majority. So what is my conclusion? If this research is right, and if the experts are right, something is going to have to happen within the next few years, minimum, as far as an Israeli-Palestinian peace plan is concerned. Israel is coming to the conclusion that they must act, and it's going to have to be likely sooner than later. Now, certainly this is extra biblical information, but it certainly leads me to believe that a peace accord must be signed with Jerusalem divided in the near future if, in fact, Israel is to avoid having all of Jerusalem be ruled over by a Palestinian majority. And of course, this is, in fact, if this information is correct and the experts are correct. But I just thought I'd bring you this short report to let you know that Jerusalem could very well be in a political crisis within the next few years if something is not done in the way of dividing Jerusalem. Now, certainly I am not for dividing Jerusalem. I believe that in the end, God will intervene, and that simply will not happen in the long run, that Jerusalem is the eternal city of Israel, and one day will be where the Lord will reign from. So don't think for a second that I think that Jerusalem should be divided. I'm only bringing up the fact that I believe that a peace accord with the final jewel being Israel or Jerusalem being divided as the final step is sooner than later. And it is, in fact, more likely that it is the peace accord that will be confirmed by the Antichrist found in Daniel 9:27. So I hope you are ready to meet the Lord, because certainly your time is running out. Well, this is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.